This is Cole Reno, the voice of Ortora.
Francis Bacon, the great philosopher and father of the scientific method, famously said, "I have taken all knowledge to be my province." Now, if there's anybody that I ever met who could justify saying that, it would be Mark Grebenau, who was literally a walking encyclopedia. Also, Mark, as we all know, was a devoted founder who maintained and took care of all the needs of our Torah, and no one that I know of deserves to be honored more than he does. I specifically asked to participate in this tribute because I was among the many people who benefited from his great knowledge, and I could certainly considered him a great person who deserved all the honors that were available.
All right. Well, the story really starts when I came to West Orange in the first place. I came to West Orange right after Sukkot in 1983. I had gotten a job at what was then Sandoz, and we were looking around for a place to live which had shuls and a mikveh, etc., etc. And West Orange presented itself very favorably, and we found a nice house which was within walking distance of what were then the two shuls in town, one of them being AABJ&D, and the other one being Beth Israel, which at that time was called the Young Israel. And it was nice. I could go to shul in the morning and then go off to work. I think each of the founders of Or Torah had his personal reasons for wanting to found the shul. But the thing that we all had in common was that we wanted this to be a shul that was based on volunteerism, volunteering of time and volunteering of assets as well. And I was very concerned when I first started calling people because I was met with something that bordered on hostility. And I later found out it was because they thought Or Torah was going to be a conventional sort of shul and would detract from the base upon which the other shuls in West Orange were established.
Mark Grebenau had a huge presence in the shul. He embodied the spirit of doing rather than talking. He was involved in everything. Nothing was too small or insignificant for him. He really taught me that, communal service in general, and Or Torah more specifically, really needs people to roll up their sleeves and get the job done. Nobody represented that more than Mark.
So everybody knows about this. Well, first of all, this is a cookie pan, but it's metal, and the reason I got it is because it's magnetic. So in Radio Shack, they make these magnets which are specially designed for you to put a business card on. And they're magnetized in the back. You peel it off, it's sticky, and then you stick the business card on it, and that way you give out your business card and people can stick it up on their refrigerator. So my idea was to get some business card type printing stuff, which I was using anyway because that's how we print out the Aliyah cards every Shabbos, and instead I printed on them 4 each of all the numbers in the number system. I hate to spoil the surprise, I am working on something better. And I actually have the materials for making it, it's just a matter of putting it all together. I didn't want to do it with the long strips with all the numbers on it. I wanted to do it a little bit more sophisticated than that. And what I was thinking of was using something along the lines of the boards in train stations that announce what track the trains are leaving on. It's called a split flap board.
Many people knew Mark Grebenau, and in so many different ways. If you listen to 10 people describing him, you'd think they were talking about 10 different people. So please take these remarks as an idiosyncratic perspective on Mark. It's difficult to believe that he's been gone for nearly 2 years. We spent many years teaching karate together, countless Tuesday evenings driving back and forth to the Young Israel of Staten Island for the master class we both attended. We got to know each other particularly well on 280, the Turnpike, the Goethals back, Turnpike, 280, again and again. I particularly enjoyed being with him during the autumn because I like to bring local apples for an after-workout snack on the way home. He used those opportunities to teach by example the proverb, waste not, want not, because he would always eat the entire thing, the core, the seeds, and all, throwing away only the stem. Mark exemplified the Talmudic advisory to prejudge everyone positively. I'm a brutal cynic, on the other hand. I judge everyone negatively. So I like to think we often found our way to the truth during those Tuesday evening journeys. Mark believed in the value of hard work and that hard work leads to rewards. You, of course, you know this from the countless academic degrees he earned, but I saw this a bit more subtly in the course of his martial arts study. When I first met him in 2004, he would come to the karate class wearing a leather kippah with 4 quadrants, like this one, but his was brown, and it had some raised lettering in one of the quadrants. I asked him what it meant, and of course he had a logical answer prepared. He told me that it represented his journey of advancement in the martial arts system. One quadrant was filled in with the date he achieved his brown belt, 3rd kyu, and the remaining 3 would be filled in with all the dates he achieved the 2nd kyu, 1st kyu, and black belt candidacy. And as the years went along, he did just that, filling in those dates on his kippah and continuing to wear it. And in June 2010, when we both became Shodan, he didn't give up. He just made a new kippah, this time in black leather, starting again with 1 date. Like studying the Torah at the end of Sukkot, he just kept going. And those were the values he communicated to his students. I hope to live up to Mark's example in the work that I do for the ventures that I value. And I look forward to seeing that Or Torah, through the new wing being dedicated in Mark's name, will also continue upholding his model through the education of our children.
From the very beginning, Dr. G, he never suggested I call him Mark, made a huge impression on me as part of our Reading Buddies program. The program brings older adults into public schools to read to kids in grades K through 2, and Dr. G never missed a day. Whereas most of our readers went for classic picture books, he was determined to read at the highest level the students would be able to follow. And at first, I worried that the books he chose would go over their heads. The Hobbit to a group of students who were already reading below grade level, especially serialized weekly over an entire school year. But watching him in action quickly put those doubts to rest. He was an animated reader, using different voices for different characters and transforming his body language to convey hobbits, dwarves, and dragons. The kids were hooked. Dr. G really intimidated me when I first took over the program. He had a deadpan sense of humor and rarely made obvious jokes. He seemed stern and a little scary. Many of our readers are friendly former teachers who sign their emails to me, love. Dr. G definitely never did that. But he did always write in our logbook in purple pen. And once, when I was going through old timesheets, I discovered that on a certain day in May, he had written, "May the 4th be with you," instead of the date. I started to appreciate what I would call his deep, old-school nerd culture. He was someone who didn't suffer fools, but he was incredibly kind and patient with the students in our program and with me. I knew almost nothing about Jewish traditions or religious observances when I began working at Jewish Family Service. But Dr. G was always willing to explain things to me, not just the way things are done, but why and what the meaning is. He became the person I would always reach out to when I wanted to make sure I was doing things right, from helping me be sure a caterer had the right rabbinical supervision to explaining why rain on Sukkot was a hassle. I actually went through my old emails from him in preparation for writing this remembrance and was struck by how funny and gentle he was, even back in the beginning when I was afraid he didn't like me. He would joke about the weather and send me articles and complimented me on my handling of a fire drill during the program. One of my last emails from him was regarding the fact that I had to cancel the program due to a flu outbreak at the school. He was disappointed that so many readers didn't have their flu shots. We commiserated on the importance of vaccines and our disappointment in the far-reaching effects of vaccine disinformation. I know if he was here now, he would have a lot of opinions to share, and I don't doubt he'd be sharing them. But the biggest thing I realized looking over those emails was how much he was invested in Reading Buddies and how much he cared about it. He loved reading to the students so much, and he wanted them to love reading as much as he did. His voices and animation were in service of telling a great and captivating story. I feel so fortunate to have worked with him for as many years as I did, and I still feel his absence in the program a year and a half later. He was sui generis, and the force was with him.
We're happy that we could participate in honoring the memory of Mark Grebenau, at this time dedicating the Youth Lounge in his memory. We really treasured Mark as a supportive member in the congregation. And one thing that his voice was always full of enthusiasm and pride for Or Torah, whether it would come across in hearing through the telephone, this is the voice of Or Torah, to make announcements. And wherever he was when he read the Sefer Yonah on Yom Kippur or in davening, he was always very conscientious to make sure that people would feel included, whether it be turning the pages to tell us what pages the tefillot are on, or handing out candy to the children, recycling, and he would and much more. And he dedicated the Beit Midrash. He wanted people to feel included of whatever age. So I always would know that Mark would be a wonderful guest speaker for programs, and also in doing Together on Tuesday, he was extremely supportive and brought tremendous knowledge and creativity in presenting his work. I want to say to Ruth and Maury and to the whole family that Mark is a part of the community, the congregation, and we miss him, and we hope that this dedication and all the other dedications that he's made throughout the years will bring a aliyah to his neshama, and that we will always be able to have that sense of his spirit that he had here in our congregation.
So we always have the expression that someone's memory should be for a blessing. And I think in Mark's case, it's more than that, because we still remember him every time we come into shul. Mark was so synonymous with congregation or Torah that even now, I think, what would Mark have said? What would Mark do? Whatever the circumstances are, whatever the changes are that we've had in the last few years. So Mark's still there. Mark, he made cards for himself to show he was the shamus. And I said to him, Mark, are you the shamus or are you the beadle? And he was one of the few people who really knew the actual difference. Mark knew so many different things about so many subjects and was able to communicate those so clearly and so engagingly to different audiences. And we will really miss him.
When I worked at Yeshiva University, there was an administrative assistant who collected empty soda bottles for the 5-cent refund that she would get. She used the money to create a bank account for her nephew, who she was supporting, so that one day he would go to college. Although he was young, she was very optimistic that she would collect enough funds to support his education. When I saw Mark, after each Shabbos Kiddush, collecting the soda bottles, I asked them if I could have them and told them why. He responded quickly and generously and said, "You take them every week. I will have a bag ready for you." And sure enough, every Sunday or Monday, there was a big plastic trash bag that I picked up, brought to yeshiva, and gave it to my colleague. I will never forget his quick response and kindness since he told me, "Howard, you're saving me a trip to the recycling center," something that still touches my heart today as I think about it.
Mark was our shul's shamus, and thinking about him on Hanukkah recalls the many ways he brought light to our shul. The most obvious was his lighting of the shul's menorahs every evening and morning during Hanukkah. His other lighting feats included everything from replacing the light bulbs in the sanctuary for nearly 25 years and rewiring the lighting in the Aron Kodesh to the LED sign in our former lobby, which proclaimed the weekly times and events, which he reprogrammed dutifully every week. For me, he brought a new light to the book of Yonah, with his reading not just from the book, but from the heart. That is why when I turn on the lights in shul, I will always think of him.
Thank you, Rabbi Spivak, for assembling this tribute to Mark Grebenau, who we considered a very close friend.
Mark epitomized precision and zeal in his service in doing mitzvos. He was always the first one into shul, opened up. He had his talis and tefillin on well before the time of the Zman Tefillah. He had which he tracked very carefully with an atomic clock. That one of those clocks still remains on the bima today for anybody who approaches the bima to actually see the time and to make sure that we start properly. He always would tell me that starting too early is also not on time. This morning, I was taking out the menorah to set up in the shul, and naturally next to the menorah that he had dedicated for his family, some yortzites, was a full bottle of oil, the wicks, a toolbox well stocked with all of the tools needed for lighting of the menorah. Anytime he came to any type of ritual activity in the shul, such as the haftorahs, he had the haftorah marked with a post-it for the start and the end. He would make sure that everything was put away after the services. He would make sure that if a light went out in the shul, that it was very rapidly replaced. He was fond upon putting the or in or Torah. And this is what, the way that he did everything in life, this type of precision, not leaving anything, to the end. It was a privilege for us to have him as a friend and as an example on how to serve the community, and never seeking acknowledgement for all of the things that he did behind the scenes.
I don't think anyone could do justice to Mark's memory in just 1 or 2 minutes. Everyone is familiar with his degrees, his belts, his titles, his accomplishments, probably had finished all the requirements for smicha. But I'd like to talk about my relationship with Mark. I met Mark in the 90s at the Or Torah house across the street from where we are now, and he was already the busy bee running around taking care of everything for the shul, for Steve and Jack. And when we moved to where we are now, he just picked up even more responsibility. He saw, things that needed to be done, and he just did them. What made them memorable was how he would go about doing them. Mark spearheaded the recycling program. He was the sensei for the Krav Maga class. He was the voice of Kol Arena. He got us our defibrillator and installed our emergency medical phone line. Was involved in our security. And who could forget the page counters, which mysteriously are stuck on 613 these days. Little things like challahs at Shalosh Shudas and the Mayim Achronim. He prepared and lit the candles on Hanukkah. He made Kiddush, he made Havdalah, and he did it all in his own unique way. He created our labels for our Sifrei Torah to make sure that they were taken out properly on Shabbos and Yontif. Mark was a stickler for time, no surprise, as I am. I guess that was the yek in him. He had set time frames for the Baal Tefillah. The clocks that we have at shul, I don't know if they're solar or lunar or whatever power, but they are the most accurate in the world. And maybe most importantly was his picking up of one very important responsibility for shul that was growing and needed someone to step up and become the Candyman. Candyman could, and he did, and he mixed it up with love and made the kids so happy, except for the one who complained about not getting the red one. What many people didn't know is that Mark would always stop after he finished being the gabbai. He would strap on his apron, walk past Mark Sofovich, hand him his sun-kissed, and then on to the kids. So many things that Mark did. He did so creatively in flair. Who could forget his Mafter Yona, which you don't need to follow along in the Chumash. Just watch, just listen, and you knew exactly what was going on in the story. I think that Mark had a tremendous sense of humor, and I'd actually gauge my one-liners or jokes by whether or not I could get him to smile or smirk after telling them. But I think I took Mark for granted. I think there was so much more I could have learned from Mark, and he was just always there, and couldn't imagine that he wasn't going to be there. And I'm sorry, and I think many people might feel the same way. I think Mark right now is up there watching over us, standing by a stender, waiting for someone to come and ask him a question so he could just quickly look at the neat piles on the stender, pick out a piece of paper, hand it to you, and you'd have your answer. I think the rabbi was spot on when he said that whenever you walk into our Torah, you can still feel Mark's presence. He was so involved in everything in the shul. I wish Mark to have an aliyah. I just miss him, and wish the best for our Torah, Mark's family, our community, and that we have a lot to thank Mark for helping us get to where we are today.
No, 3, 2, 1. Thank you for all the candy, Dr. Grebenau. Thank you for
1, 2, 3.
Thank you for the candy, Dr. Grebenau. Thank you for the candy, Dr. Grebenau.
Gute Nacht.